Good evening, friends. I hope all is well. And we're halfway through the week. This is great. Let's keep motoring. I hope you're hitting your marks. That's what I tell my business guys. Hit your marks, man. Just stay consistent. A lot of what you're going to do successfully is what you do successfully consistent. And consistently successfully. Whatever it may be. But nonetheless, I hope that you are remaining in peace in Christ and that your steps are being ordered of him. Tonight we're going to be in Matthew 25, 1 through 13. The title of the sermon is Be Prepared. And if you're familiar with this story, Jesus tells the parable of the 10 virgins. And to some, this story might sound harsh. It might sound like some of them aren't sharing and some of them aren't caring. But it is a discussion of priorities. It's a discussion of focus. And if we are not serving Christ and he being our focus, we're not really going to love very well. And we're not going to serve very well. And we will get confused as it relates to what is compassion and what is enabling. And so if the needs of others cause you to compromise your relationship with Christ, you are most likely in the wrong place. You have the wrong focus, and your efforts are not in accordance with him. So listen to the discussion tonight and evaluate where you're at in this. Regularly, people will come to you with needs. And they've made decisions. I know in my life I've had seasons of needs and things, and I'm not one that's really good in asking for help. My wife smiled. I mean, if you want a story about it, when I had surgery on my leg, you remember this? And the patio door failed because termites had eaten the wall. I went and locked my leg straight, completely straight, and repaired the wall and put in a new patio door. And it wasn't the brightest idea, but I was so frustrated with that season and just kind of hung up on the injury and where I was at that I just did whatever I had to do. And not really the best thing, but I pray that we are in a position that we develop relationships with people that can be trusted. And it's not that anybody in my family couldn't be. It's just I'm not so good at asking for help. I want to get it done. So, but Jesus tells this story, and it's a short section. I'll read you the 3 points we're going to go through tonight. And I pray it hits somewhere. I pray it sticks. And I think very often people think that tolerance is compassion, acceptance is compassion, but enabling and tolerance are abusive. They're abusive. And abusive people want it when it's convenient and they don't want it when it isn't. And there's not much you can do to help them. They're going to learn on their own, and they're going to learn the hard way until enough life hits them in the face that they change what they're doing. So 3 points tonight. Point 1, the prudent invest in what is right, and the foolish invest in themselves, verses 1 through 5. The prudent invest in what is right, and the foolish invest in themselves. We as servants of Christ are to be people of action. And we are to be available. And we're either going to prove our worth through preparation for the sake of Christ, or we're going to show that we're self-centered frauds. There's really no in between. There's really no in between. Point 2 tonight, Christians do not enable bad behavior. It would be poor stewardship, verses 6 through 12. Christians do not enable bad behavior. It would be poor stewardship. The one thing about enabling is it comes down to control issues, and I'm going to be incredibly blunt if you haven't noticed. but it's also rooted in hatred. It is a hatred of righteous standards. It's a hatred of good patterns. And sometimes I've missed this in dealing with people, only to find out later that the people that are asking for help are abusive themselves. And people will often play the victim, hoping for better, hoping for things to be easy. And then once certain levels or certain things are accomplished, they're done with you. And you're really not going to negotiate with them. They've been at this for a while, and they most likely have ruined a lot of their relationships. They are regularly sociopathic, and so they have a high turnover of close friends and any number of things. And that's a discussion of fruit. And you say, well, what happens in the church when things like that happen? Well, Paul had people abandon him. It's true, he did, but it was because a righteous standard was expected. It wasn't for the sake of serving self. It was for the sake of the kingdom. And there were points that people counted the cost and they were done with it. They wanted to go back. They wanted to go back to the Matrix, right? Have you ever seen that movie? They wanted to go back to the Matrix. They knew it was all fake. They knew it was all a lie, but they would rather be drunk, fat, and happy than to live in the real world. And Christianity is the real world. It's the real world. Like, it's the forever awesome world. Mm-hmm. Point 3, my wife's agreeing with me. So far, I'm doing great. You've agreed with me. Point 3, the humble obey, the proud assume. Now, I'm not going to tell you what assuming does. I know that saying's been said enough. But when we're prone to assumptions, there are some that there's some decisions or things that we can decide based on patterns. But if you spend any time around me or people, maybe even of similar mind and heart, there are things that you'll kind of pick up on as you go along, and you hold loosely to them. And there's times you see things and you're hoping that they are not the case, and you root for people. Believe it or not, you root for people, and you hope against all things that people will make decisions for their betterment. But when you teach a scriptural standard and people are offended by that, or people feel targeted by that because they're just dug in and they've just chosen to hate, the enablers will come to their rescue because they think any standard's a terrible standard. And it usually has to do with issues of shame and sin in their own life. That's usually what it has to do with. So I don't look at enablers as these innocent individuals. I think that they decide that they can work off their sin, and they just make it even worse every time. So let's dive into the story tonight. Point 1, the prudent invest in what is right, and the foolish invest in themselves. Verses 1 through 5. Then the kingdom of heaven will be compared to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom, or the bridegroom, 5 of them were foolish and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they did not take extra oil with them, but the prudent ones took oil in flasks with their lamps. Now, while the groom was delayed, they all became drowsy and began to sleep. But at midnight, there finally was a shout, "Behold, the groom, come out to meet him." Again, that was just for verses 1 through 5, but I read 1 through 6. So the prudent invest in what is right, and the foolish invest in themselves. The prudent obviously had taken for themselves extra oil and had planned for things not to be perfect. All right? I think that's a good idea. I think regularly we look at certain things. I'll give you an example. I had to go do a job. I was actually finishing it up today. And in my mind's eye, when I first looked at the job, I was like, man, I'll knock this thing out in no time at all. Well, the only problem was I don't know what measurement I was using the day I looked at it. But it was about 30 feet bigger than I thought it was by the time I walked through the whole gig. I mean, I'm doing fine on the job. I'm not worried about that. But I idealized that entire interaction. And then once I got digging into it, I thought, oh my goodness, what have you done? And it got cut short because of the rain the other day. I probably would have been much further along than I was. But it's fine. I mean, I got it done today, no problem. But very often we look at situations, and in this, you had 5 individuals who proved themselves that their mindset was right, and 5 that were always going to require work. They weren't going to do it for themselves. They brought just enough to get by, and the others brought enough to make sure that they were successful. So when we are called into action as servants of Christ, we are either going to prove our worth through preparation, or we're going to show ourselves to be self-centered frauds. And as we wait for Christ, life will go on, but we must be ready for when he arrives. So when the groom arrived, 5 were capable of meeting him because they had planned well, and 5 of them were going to turn to those who had planned well and mooch. Pay attention. So there was no sin in them slumbering. It was to be expected because of the delay. However, the sin was in the fact that the fools had brought their lamps that were now useless because they were empty. If they had prepared like the others, they would not have burnt out. I think in our lives, we have to regularly take into account of what's in store. Like, what are we holding on to? What are we filling up with? What oil are we relying on? Are we looking for just enough? And if everything goes perfect, oh, whew, we made it. Are we planning for seasons of difficulty? Jesus told us that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. Trials and tribulations and traumas, they come for each and every one of us. If our hope is actually in him, and no man knows the day or the hour, and no one truly grasps altogether what season we are in as it relates to his coming, then we have to live lives that are disciplined. We have to be self-disciplined. It's not a popular message. What people would rather hear about is how to hold on to their peace and not draw boundaries that are exclusionary, or have standards that demand that you take a position. And all of those sermons and those types of sermons lead to a fouled identity, a lack of mercy, and no sense of justice. It's just not Christianity. Sorry. It's just not Christianity. When you get down to a discussion of peace, it is a Christ-centered peace, which means that we are obedient and we are ready. We are obedient and we are ready, and we are willing to do as he has called us to do. In 2 Peter chapter 3, 7-9, it says this: "But by his word the present heavens and earth are being reserved for fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. But do not let this one fact escape you." Whenever you're in a conflict, I want you to hold on to something, okay? There are going to be things in a conflict that are rooted in principles and or ideals, philosophies, hopefully scriptural principles that are immovable. They are immovable. And so when you begin to discuss violations of boundaries or vows, there are some things that we're not negotiating with. We're going to go back to the root issue. And so if you've had issues in a relationship where somebody's blatantly lied and they keep wanting you to move past that, unless there's true repentance and it's an all stop at that issue, there's no relationship to be found on the other side of that discussion. Everything after that is going to be on sinking sand. There's nothing foundational that's acceptable. And you'll find this where people have clarity and then confusion. Okay, you'll deal with somebody on one issue as it relates to their idea of who they are, and they demand justice. But then in the next sense, they aren't going to carry that theme out for you in a situation where you're justified by your own behavior and you've been wronged by somebody else. And even when they wrong you, and it's sad when that's a parent or a spouse or a child, best friend, you name it. It's not good. But those are not issues that should be dragging you into the mire, if you will, again and again. You have to draw a boundary, and you have to hold to that main tenet, which is the only way that relationship is restored. Otherwise, the other party's not repentant. And it'd be the same for you in another situation. If you've made a violation and somebody's holding you to account for that, then own it and grow. Own it and grow. But do not let this one fact escape your notice, beloved, that with the Lord, one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years like one day. The Lord is not slow about his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient towards you, not wishing for any to perish, but for all to come to repentance. Point 2, Christians do not enable bad behavior. It would be poor stewardship, verses 6 through 10. But at midnight, there finally was a shout, "Behold the groom! Come out to meet him." Then all those virgins got up and trimmed their lamps. But the foolish virgins said to the prudent ones, "Give us some of your oil, because our lamps are going out." However, the prudent ones answered, "No, there most certainly would not be enough for us and you. Go instead to the merchants and buy some for yourselves." But they were on their way to buy oil. But while they were on their way to buy oil, the groom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door shut. And the door was shut. So this idea of enabling bad behavior, what was the request? The request was to harm their opportunity. It was not a request to share, because the 5 prudent ones knew exactly how much they needed, and their point was, if yours are going out, ours will as well. And if we split the oil we have between us and you, there won't be enough for all of us, and then we perish. This opportunity disintegrates, it disappears, and it's because I've given to you something that is now sacred, if you will, because it's opening a door that is ultimately going to be closed. So the foolish will not follow the example of the wise. That is what you see from the beginning. Okay? 5 of them took enough, 5 of them refused. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the 5 foolish ones did not follow the pattern of the wise. What did they do? Instead, they tried to exploit them. They tried to take advantage of them. This is why when there is good planning in your life and opportunities are abounding, many times we will try to add things to our life because we're feeling pretty good about what's going on. This is error. It is best, if things are going well, first and foremost, to obey the voice of the Holy Spirit. But often we'll get a little big for our britches if stuff's going good. And we'll think, well, now I'm in such a position that I can do A, B, and C, and I can extend myself, and I can do this, and I can do that. And the answer that I would give somebody is, how about we just try to be successful? Well, I already am. No, you're not. That door just opened, did it not? Well, yeah. So it's the same in business. The idea with business that people struggle with is a business is something you put money in initially. You don't take it out. You invest in the business. So people will start making money and then they start pulling it out. They start spending it. Instead of getting a good footing and a foundation, they begin to exploit their own blessing, opportunity, whatever you want to call it. And they'll buy things. They'll buy cars. They'll buy this. They'll buy that. Homes, bikes, you name it. And buying a home ain't bad. I'm not saying it is. I think that is something that we should be looking to do. I would not necessarily do it if that purchase was so much pressure on you that it began to destroy your peace. I don't think that'd be a good idea. But these 5 did not follow the example of the wise. Why? Because they were selfish and sensual. And it was not a lack of compassion for the wise to refuse to give the foolish oil. It was evidence of their understanding of the time and season. No, I'm not going to enable you. I'm going to send you to the source from which I gained this, to the merchants. Go buy for yourself because you didn't want to spend earlier, because you didn't, obviously they didn't have it. They didn't prepare. They didn't invest. They did not do the right things for when the bridegroom arrived. And it truly seems as if they didn't care. Oh, well, I'm just absent-minded. I'm just this, I'm just that, Not when it comes to the things that matter. Isn't it interesting that people can be absent-minded about certain things, but they can remember every offense? They can remember every time they didn't feel particular things or they were slighted. It's all a discussion of priorities. We're either going to wear ourselves out with offense or we're going to fill ourselves with understanding. It's a choice. It's a choice. We will either exhaust ourselves with offense or we will be filled with understanding. You can't have both. It's interesting to me that people feel like because they've been injured and made a lot of stupid decisions in their lives, they have something to pour into other people's lives. You don't. Not to be rude, but the fruit of the life is just a discussion of the level of confusion, not character. If you can't pour character into people's lives, there's really not a whole lot going on. So it wasn't a lack of compassion. It was a discussion of understanding. It was evidence of their understanding. Why were they not sharing their oil? Because then they would all run out. And that's just stupid. They were not willing to disappoint or fail the bridegroom. Now it's a discussion of priorities as well. The priority was to please the bridegroom at his coming. And if they were all standing there with lamps that went out, they would be ridiculous. What a disappointment. So the bridegroom meets 5 of the virgins who are clearly invested in seeing that commitment fulfilled. So they were not willing to disappoint or fail the bridegroom. Instead, they put the responsibility back on the shoulders of those who should have known to be ready. Now, it is true that we are all supposed to help with one another's burdens at points, but every individual should be prepared to carry their own. That's just fact. And if individuals are not willing to carry their own burdens, if they're not willing to deal with their own issues, and everything has to be everyone else's emergency all the time, no thank you. That's a life lived with very poor stewardship. No thank you. So the priority of our lives must be Christ. We must give him our first fruits. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, if you have a family, your first fruits are Christ's. Everything else after that belongs to your spouse. Ladies, your husband. Husband, your ladies. Your lady. One. That makes sense. You knew what I meant.
One husband.
Yeah, I know. I was just making it clear. I don't even misquote it at the end of the day. Yeah. But local pastor advocates for... No, I didn't. All right. Then everything else after that. I think there's some difficulty in the way things have been framed within our societies, that somehow children are the priority. And I know, and I love children. I can prove it. I have plenty of them. I think they're great. But if I'm not investing in my relationship with my wife, then I'm giving them a broken household. And if her priorities are them before me, it's still a broken household. It's a broken household. There is no chance that that can change and be successful. If my wife is my priority after Christ, obviously, and hers is mine after Christ, obviously, then there will be peace and it'll be productive. And if the order of the home is biblical, good things come of that. I know that we've been pumped full of movies, stupid movies out of Hollywood. For crying out loud, they were all psyops. Just get it, okay? Want to watch them for entertainment, so be it. But the whole goal was to destroy the nuclear family. That's obvious, okay? How many years did we watch movies full of stupid dads and really smart moms? Not saying that we don't have smart moms. I just don't think we have a world full of stupid dads that are clueless and unplugged in every aspect. I mean, really, we've destroyed the inner city. We've filled the inner city with single parent homes. Majority of them, 70% are raised by single moms. This is not okay. And I'm cheering for the single moms in these situations, but these were decisions. These were some bad decisions that got us to this. All right. So the priority of our lives must be Christ. He must be the one who receives our first fruit. It does not mean that we can justify being without compassion, but we cannot serve anyone well unless we are serving Christ first. Okay? So we can't justify being compassionless, but if we're compromising our relationship with Christ for the sake of servanthood, then we'll never be a good servant because he's the one that teaches us how to do it. Turn your Bibles to Luke chapter 16, verses 10 through 13. It says, "He who is faithful in the little things is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. Therefore, if you have been faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you?" Excuse me, Jiminy. Hold on a second. There we go. "And if you have been faithful in the use of that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." All right. Doesn't work. You can't do it. You can't do it. Point 3, the humble obey, the proud assume. Excuse me, try not to yawn here. Well, there we go. "Yet later the other virgins came, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open up for us.' But he answered, 'Truly I say to you, I do not know you. But be on the alert then, because you do not know the day nor the hour.'" I thought they were told to go to the merchants, right? So they come back after having that, which they were. They obviously were not quick to it. The door is closed. And they begin to bang on the door, right? And the voice from within answers very simply. You proved what you were prepared for. Think about it. Does that make sense? Let's just summarize it all in that sense. So while they were gone, he arrives. They go in, they close the door, and they miss their opportunity. And to a degree, they're almost shameless. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. They knew what was expected. They knew what was required. They didn't do any of it. They didn't do any of it. And then they come back and bang on the door. And the response is simple. I don't know you. I don't know you. You didn't value me. And if you didn't value me, how would I ever have a relationship with you? I think regularly we overestimate our contribution to the kingdom and underestimate the requirements. Well, it's all by grace. There's nothing we can do to earn it. Nobody's saying that. But if you won't do the simple things well, nothing great will ever be entrusted to you. I mean, this is such a simple thing. And the entire time, the 5 foolish virgins are waiting for someone to carry their water. That's shameless. It's just shameless. And I pray and wonder and question, if we are in a similar position at points, that our expectations of Christ is for him to do all the things that he's already told us to do for us. You know how many times I deal with people who are offended, and then as the truth comes out about their own conduct, you find out just how cruel of an individual they actually are. And sometimes that works with people for a while. You know what I mean? It confuses people for a while. It keeps them off balance for a while. People pretend. But when the season comes, as it relates to what is in your storehouse, do you have your lamp filled? Do you have extra oil? Are you going to hang in there? You can't pretend to be prepared in the way that we need to be prepared. You can't bluff your way through it. Jesus doesn't fall for sociopaths. He's not going to do it. He's not going to be, gaslit at this point, oil lit, but he's not going to be gaslit. He's just not going to fall for it. He's not going to give way to the manipulative. He's not. And that's what these 5 were asking for. The 5 that were prepared, man, they were on point. They stood on business. They did what they were supposed to do. And Jesus is saying, look, if you're going to be successful as it relates to a life that is built around my arrival, you're going to have boundaries. You're going to have boundaries. If you don't, you're going to get fleeced. You're going to get fleeced. You're going to get taken. And here's the interesting part of the story, if you think about it. Let's go to this up here real quick. Verse 9, however, the prudent ones answered, no, there most certainly would not be enough for us and you too. Here's something you need to remember. There are times you're dealing with people that look unprepared, and there might be a compulsion to help, but one thing you need to remember is there are people out there that just want to see everybody fail. They want to dirty you up. They want to mess you up. They want to drag you into the hole. They want to make accusations, false statements. They want to lie. Just maintain your focus, y'all. Just maintain your focus and hold that straight and narrow line. Listen, in our lives, each and every one of us, you and I, we've messed up. We've messed up. And there's a major difference between messing up and gaslighting everybody and playing the victim. They're two different things. And sometimes, I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible, but there's sometimes a very thin line between stupid and cruel. They can look exactly the same, and they have almost the exact same outcomes. And you got to be smart. If you are focused on Christ, you're not focused on pleasing men. You're focused on pleasing him. So the humble obey and the proud assume, the proud assume. The only control we have is over our own behavior. And we cannot justify waiting. There is no excuse for disobedience. We have to begin to be disciplined. Remember that procrastination is typically present because we are angry and we're discontent. These individuals didn't just fail to plan, they planned to fail. Why do things not get done around us that should be? Well, we overcommit, we fill our lives with silly things, hoopla, as I call it. Oh, nothing annoys me more than seeing the hoopla. Well, I can't do this because I have to have 55 different things in place and it all has to be perfect. It doesn't. I heard a guy say it the other day as it relates to business. Sometimes when you're doing something that's new, get yourself in so deep that the only way out is you figure it out. And I will tell you, that is a fact. I can't tell you the times I've stood there going, Duncan, you're going to have to get this one together. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't even know how it's done, but we're going to do it. We're going to get it done because you committed to do it. So you say, well, that sounds like overcommitting. It may have been. It could have been. You're right. Maybe I have something to deal with in that. But thank you for YouTube University. Anyhow, we must commit all our energy into serving Christ wholeheartedly. Christ knows the heart of every person, and he will judge the true disciple and the superficial servant. And that's the thing about these five. They were all superficial. There will be no mercy for those who are deceivers. I want you to hear that. I want you to hear that. I have heard of some of the craziest levels of deceit of late. Just wild. And people that they're cruel. And man, it's unbelievable. Even those willing to harm children. Just unbelievable levels of cruelty. And some still think they're justified to do it. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me how easy it is for some to exploit others and walk around feeling completely justified. Fascinating. There will be no mercy for those who are deceivers, but the faithful, they will find peace. In John chapter 5, 44 through 46, it says this, How can you believe when you receive glory from one another, and you do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God? Do you not think that I will accuse you before the Father? The one who accuses you is Moses. Or, I'm sorry, it says, do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. All the Pharisees and Sadducees were superficial. They had no problem harming others, but man, they would squeal and squeak when it came to them being harmed. And it's important that we evaluate our own hearts to make sure we're not in the same group. The same group. That's why I'm challenging, and I may even pick up the phone and do it. You Christian schools that are trying to require certain things for students to be there, you're being lazy and you're being cruel. Sure, they need to have a Christian faith, but if you're following state guidelines that are not mandated for your type of school and you can't figure that out and you're not willing to fight for their health, Jesus talks about the reward that comes to those who give a cup of water to those in need. And you offer no relief and no protection. Sad. I just think I'm sorry, I think you people are sad. And if you're worried as to whether or not I'll tell them personally, don't. I don't have any problem doing that. You've seen that. But we're not going to budge on this. And maybe God's going to open some doors soon so we can fix this. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But it's on my heart, and it's time that the church stand up and start protecting kids. I think there's good people out there doing it. I think I know who I'm voting for governor. And I like his stance. And I don't have any problem telling you who he is when time is there. But I think I got it. Anyhow, I will talk to you all soon. I love you. I'm praying for you. Sunday morning, 11:15 Eagles. Hope to see you.